Amen. So, just want to say thank you to Pastor for letting us preach tonight. Amen. Happy birthday as well. It's his birthday today. So real quick, with everything going on in the world nowadays, you see all these floods, earthquakes, fires going on, everything going on, even in your own life here today. You might be going through something in life, but I want to ask you a question. Where is God in your life at this very moment? Is he third in your life? Is he second? Or is he first in your life? I think we all know where he should be in our lives. That doesn't always mean we always have him there where he needs to be. That doesn't always mean we have him first in our lives. There are struggles in life. There are moments in our life where we feel like nobody knows what we're going through. Mikael preached a great sermon on Wednesday. There are tests in life, and then there are challenges in life too. Many other things that will come into our lives that will cause us to lose our focus on God and cause us to think that we need a worldly answer to our worldly problems. You see, if you were to do some adding and you were to say you plus the world, that only equals more problems. But you plus God equals heavenly solutions. Amen. So that's what we need. We need to bring God into the equation to help us in our day-to-day life. Amen. So there are three things that happen when we put God first. Number one, we honor him. It brings honor to God. He is truly worthy of honor. Amen. Second, it demonstrates faith, which, by the way, it is impossible to please God if we don't have faith. It's not difficult. It's impossible to please him without faith. It's a demonstration of faith when we put God first. And third, it unlocks blessings in our lives. Amen. So very quickly, let's go ahead and let's just talk about something we don't always like to talk about, but finances, putting God first in our finances. And in Genesis chapter 4, verse 3 to 5, so this right here, these verses are the very first time that the very first record of a human being giving any kind of offering to God. Cain was a tiller of the soil. Abel was a keeper of the flocks. Amen. Let's go ahead and read verses 3 to 5. And in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. Amen. So let me just say that both of them were right with bringing God an offering. They were both right about that, bringing an offering from what they did with their lives. But there is a distinction made between Abel's offering and Cain's offering. When Cain's offering is mentioned, there's nothing really said about it. Maybe it was because it was just an offering that didn't cost him much or didn't cost him anything. Maybe it was just his leftovers. Maybe it was last night's leftovers, from whatever he was eating, and he just brought it as an offering, whatever he had left over. But when Abel brought his offering, it said that it was the firstborn. He brought the fat thereof, meaning the very best part. So Abel brought his first and his very best to God. Cain brought something that didn't cost him much. We heard that, that the message in the morning with Pastor Clayton Reed, bringing our best foot forward and just doing our best for God. And so God respected Abel's offering, but did not respect Cain's offering. And in Genesis chapter 4, verse 6 through 7, reads, "So the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it." Cain did not bring his best as Abel did, and most likely the reason why Cain didn't bring his best is because there was probably other things going on in his life. His focus wasn't on God at the moment. His focus was on whatever else his life was surrounding him. And there was a distance between Cain and God and in their relationship. So we need to honor God with our first, with our very best. When we give to him, if we put God first in our finances, I promise you that he will take care of you. Amen. And when I first started coming to church, I didn't really have a job. We were kind of struggling, my family and I. My parents also didn't have a job. We were having a hard time, especially when it came down to paying the rents. We were always late, always things happening. We kind of had to pretty much just stand on corners and selling flowers just to make ends meet, kind of thing. And when I started coming to church, I realized, whatever it is that I have, it's because of God, and I've decided, I'm gonna start giving to God. I'm gonna start doing this, and then finally one time I decided to just give my all to God. I told God, I don't want to live this double life anymore. I want to go ahead and serve you and only you, and I just want to, give the rest of my life to you and just be a servant to you. And when that happened, when I gave my life to God, that very same week, for whatever reason, my dad got a job first that very week, then my mom got a job, and then I got a job that same very week, which was kind of almost impossible. And and so God did that for me, and I know God has done many things for some of you here as well. And if you're here, you're kind of in that position where you think you're not able to give, or you might be thinking like, oh, if I give, I'm not going to be able to pay for this or pay for that. If you put God first, God will take care of you. Amen. And then the second area that we need to put God first, and this is also a tough one, is with our family and with our friends. Now, this can be a hard area to kind of listen to and to actually do. I know that it was for me when I first started coming around. And in Matthew chapter 10, verse 34 to 39, reads, "Do not think that I come to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemy will be those of his own household. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he who does not take his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. He who finds his life will lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake will find it." Amen. So God must be first in our lives, even before our families. When I first started seeking God, I grew up Catholic, and then I started going to a Christian church. My dad found out about it. And he wasn't always like a Catholic. He would kind of go every now and then, for Christmas or Easter, those type of things. But when he found out, him and I, we had like a big discussion, and he ended up kicking me out of the house for that reason, because I told him I wasn't gonna stop going to church and stop trying to follow Christ. And so he ended up kicking me out for a little bit and all that. But I had to make a choice. I had to sort of, I had to make that choice in my life. I had sort of seen the impact God was making in my life. It wasn't a big impact as far as the world could see, but it was things, but it was things like the way I talk, the way I would present myself, the way I would speak, things inside of my mind where my mind wasn't always going crazy, where I finally had peace in my mind. And I finally started having joy, and I started seeing things inside of my life where I started changing here and there. I wasn't, addicted to all the things that I was addicted to before, drinking, smoking, and all that other stuff. I made that decision, and I had to make that decision with my friends as well and with cousins of mine. It was never an easy thing, but God is well worth it. Amen. I've heard testimonies and testimonies after testimonies about this very same thing, about family members kind of interrupting them or trying to say, hey, you don't need to go to church all the time. You don't need to go ahead, you don't need to be doing that all the time. You don't have to be a part of it. You don't have to give this much. I've heard of testimony of a young girl in Taiwan where she got pretty much shunned out of her family because she chose to follow Christ. And in Taiwan, bringing honor to your family is everything. And I'm sure that wasn't an easy thing for her. And I know for people like who are Muslims, they can also have a hard time, a very difficult time in this area. And there are some here who, with similar stories like that. And we need to keep our eyes on the prize. We need to think more about the fact that most of our rewards are on the other side. Eternity is the great equalizer. God settles up for those kinds of decisions. You lose your life for His sake, you will find it. The great thing about choosing God is that you get to learn from Him. He teaches you things. He teaches you things, so when the time is ready, you can go back to your friends, you can go back to your family, your coworkers, whoever it may have been that was trying to get you to stop going to church, and you get to tell them what Jesus is doing in your life and what He can do for their lives as well. Normally, people would not make these types of decisions where they would choose a church or some sort of organization over their family, unless they've had a personal experience, a supernatural touch of God, where they choose to follow Christ. And so there is blessings in all this. There's peace of mind, there is joy, there is comfort, there is security when we place God first in our lives. Struggles after struggles. And so when we struggle and hard times come, we shouldn't be looking around at the world trying to see what type of answers the world can give us. We need to look at God when these things happen. I know that it's sometimes easier said than done, especially when you're in the middle of a storm, but we need to give God complete control of the situation. We need to allow God to work in our times of hardship. God knows what He's doing. We need to have faith that God will intervene, because the reason why is because we put Him first in our lives and in that area. Trust God, pray, read His Word constantly, build that relationship with Him, and He will take care of you. He'll take care of your family. Amen. There's so much more that we can place God in our lives in. I could go on and on, but this is just some of the things that I felt personally that I personally had to go through. So with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and have Adam come up here.